with you. I was called at home last night by Sergeant Stafford, and he had heard about it on the 5 o'clock news, and he called me at my home last night and told me, and I think I just mentioned my wife. Bowman died, and she knew who he was because I'd put a lot of work in on the case, and she says, "Oh." That pretty much, that was, yeah, that was pretty much it. It was a Sunday night, I'm pretty sure, and as soon as I got to work, I got a call from the mayor, who was Charlie Nichols at the time. I'm talking 45 years ago. This is a long time ago. Gave me the information of this girl was missing, and apparently he got calls from people that were friends of the family, and they really thought something was wrong, and he called me and asked me if I'd look into it, and I looked at the missing report and went out to the house, and I spoke to the parents, sat down with the parents. If I'm not mistaken, a sister was there also. She may have been an older sister. And sat down with them and talked to her about Elizabeth, and there was nothing that they said would indicate a girl that would do this on her own, run away. But I still wasn't that concerned. And I remember asking if I could go into her room and look through her room, which I did, and look for any diaries, anything. I can't remember. A long time ago, I can't remember if there was nothing I found that would be indicative of anything that she had some other secrets in her life. Nothing at all. So these girls were still playing with. She was a kid. She was 14 years old, and she was a kid. It's a terrible crime, no matter when but at that time, Belleville was a much quieter town. The police department did not have the activity that it has now, and this was a huge crime for this young girl's body to be found then. I believe she was abducted somewhere between Belleville West and her house, absolutely. Many, many times in my mind, my wife and I went to, on the night she disappeared, went to one of the shows downtown. There was a Lincoln Theater and the Ritz Theater, and we went to one of them, probably the Ritz Theater, and watched a movie, and we'd have gone back home on West Main Street, and I went right past the railroad tracks near Belleville West, somewhere right around the time this would have occurred, and she would have been abducted. And I've constantly gone over in my mind, did I see anything at all? And I never saw anything or out of place that I remember, but I wasn't looking for it.
Through that process, he was free for 7 days.
Free for a week, yes. And I started working on this, and I was working with the St. Clair County State's Attorney's Office, and I was retired at the time. I was retired from the police department, but I was still working here in a civilian capacity, and I remember Bob Hader, who was state's attorney at the time, called me and asked me if I'd serve as special investigator on the case on bringing him back to trial in St. Clair County, and I told him yes, I would. So I was doing some things on that, and I was looking into other cases, and I started looking at cases all throughout the state of Illinois, and actually Missouri and in Indiana, and specifically calling county sheriff's office. And basically I'd started by calling and asking, you got anybody that's been there 30 years? I would speak to them and find out if there's anything, and then if they had anything that may have matched and fit the time frame, checking to see if the evidence was still around. And in many of these cases, that evidence had been discarded at some time during the 30 years. I called Joe Burgoon on another girl that was found murdered in St. Louis back around that time frame. Her name was Sharon Fowler, and we had worked on that, and he said he was looking into trying to locate the evidence on that case. And I called him several times. Did you ever come up with anything? No, nothing yet. When I heard Bowman was released on bond, because I knew he was bondable, when I heard he was released on bond, I called him that day, and did you ever come up with any information on any evidence? He says, no. He says, there is none, there's nothing left, we can't find anything. And then Joe mentioned, but we have looked into another case that fits that time frame, and we have a partial male DNA on that case. And I called the girl back and I said, I've got a DNA profile I'd like you to check against on that homicide victim, that you recovered the DNA. And she said she would, and she called me back in very short time, 15 minutes, and told me it was a complete match. And her name was Velda Rumfeld, was the victim in that case. Yeah, there were, as a matter of fact, on the Velda Rumfeld case, there were other missing young white female victims. I believe there may have been 5 in St. Louis County within a 10-week period, and this was during the same time frame, because we're only talking a time frame of when he got out of prison until we arrested him in Belmont on where he did abduct another girl in the laundromat in Belleville, and we arrested him on that case.